Designed from the ground up, the D'Addario Backline Gear Transport Pack is the ultimate solution for players on the move. With more than 8 specialized storage and transport compartments built right in, it makes getting everything to the gig painless and intuitive.
I'm here with Torsten Kinsella from God is an Astronaut. We're here in Wimble Lane Recording Studios, and we're just going to talk about his current guitar setup.
Cool. Yeah, so we've got quite a number of guitars here. We've got the Fender Stratocaster HSS. Just the noiseless pickups, very good for live. A lot of the earlier material that I had definitely suits this guitar a lot. Everything I'd say from the end of the beginning to all is violent, all is bright, and definitely far from refuge would all been using the Stratocaster. And it's mostly stock bar the locking tuners in the back, just handy for live string breaks that can change it pretty quick. I put just in a little the kind of rubber locks that kind of lock in your guitar underneath the buttons, so I don't hit off them too often.
Is that a stock bridge then? Is it locked? Or is it still, can you still use it with the whammy bar?
No, I've actually I've disabled that because it's just better for different tunings. So yeah, that's kind of better for me because I do a lot of different tunings that we have. Must be nearly about 10 different tunings.
Yeah.
But
that's one thing I've noticed is typically live you used to stick to one guitar, so you had quite a lot of tuning gaps and it was quite complicated. Is that something that you've brought out more guitars for? Is it for sound or is it both?
I think for maybe 2 reasons. One, I was kind of we were a little bit, I think there's too many tuning gaps live, so I like to have a few different extra guitars to kind of fix that problem. A Gretsch custom shop Penguin that Stephen Stern built.
It's got a really nice finish on this one, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like the red sparkle, and again, it's just 2 TV Jones pickups in here, and again, I put. Gretsch won't be too happy with that guy. I just put in some 2 matching tuners in there, but they're locking as well.
And then do you generally stick to the same gauge of strings, or is it guitar dependent or sound dependent or tuning dependent, or how do you choose that?
Well, I'll tell you what we've done, and they're kind of a mixed set. So I think this is like 60 gauge up here. I think that's 44, 32, and then I could use slightly lighter down here, so it's 20, 14, and 11. 1 or 2 of the other guitars might have a little bit lighter on tops because I'm not detuning as much. They might be down to 56 or whatever. But this is generally drop day tuning. And I love this guitar. It's a little bit duller obviously than your single coils, but I really like the mid-tone off it. It's just a fantastic guitar, and I've used this this has been my main guitar for the last couple of years. I was using a Red 345, but this one had replaced that, and this very stable. Again, I put on this what do they call it, a Vibramate, just to be able to tune. It's just easier to restring, to be honest with you. I hate that idea of trying to
getting under
it. I did change. There is I just put a steel bar in here, as you can see. There's no spring in it. Again, just for, I do change. There's one or two different tunings even with this guitar, and if I put the spring in it, it tends to go sharp very quickly. So if you tune this one down or up, it affects the other strings. So this definitely stops that.
Interesting color.
Yeah, this is the one I Gretsch had built for me, and it's again, it's another Gretsch Penguin, and the two TV Jones pickups again in here. They're Filtertron pickups there, and this is a magnetron in the middle, which is a single coil, and you can just, if you want it on, you just hit it down or that way. The middle leaves it off. And that's a separate volume knob for it.
So when you say Gretsch built this, how involved were you in the sort of circuitry decisions and the switches and the different pickup combination possibilities? And
I kind of told them,
you chose. And
yeah, I chose the whole thing, and they kind of corrected me on a few things that they said weren't possible, and they said you can't do certain things. So, but yeah, that was my idea, and the color, the whole thing, and they kindly put in their own locking tuners in here,
okay,
which is cool, and. I had John Moriarty change his guitar luthier here in Ireland. They had a kind of a steel bridge here. I didn't like the tone of it, so that the wooden one really just makes it much more, a little bit more harmonious to my ears anyway. Again, Vibramate there, and a little bit treblier than the other guitar, even without using the single coil. I don't take this one out live, but I do use it in recording situations. This is a National Glenwood 1961, and used to belong to the bass player from The Who, John Entwistle, and it was his original guitar, and I got it from Jimmy's Music Store here in Dublin, and when I seen it, it wasn't in too good a condition, but
it looks fantastic now.
John Moriarty put in a truss rod into the whole thing, so it's much easier to play. The way it was before was like the action and everything on it was nearly impossible to play with it. And Curtis Novak rewound this pickup here, who was fantastic at making his own pickups, Curtis Novak pickups, and restored this guitar. It sounds amazing, and I would use this for select tracks where I want a different tone. Antique at this point, and that's something I want to take out on the road. But I did put locking tuners on it, which but the holes are in the same place, so I can put the original ones back in if I ever wanted to. But yeah, I will play that in a bit. The last one is that I have here today is just a US Jazzmaster, kind of like a vintage reissue. The only thing
looks pretty stock.
Yeah, it's pretty stock. Well, I did change a few things on it. You can't really see much, but basically beneath this there's a stay trem locking system where it just, so the tremolo arm doesn't move too easy. I really like that. And I also changed it to the stay trem bridge here as well. which is just a little bit better than the stock, and because the stock one, it does rattle, and I do play a little behind here sometimes.
Okay.
And when you use the stock one, it just comes loose. It's not great.
And then let's talk about your pedal board maybe.
Okay.
And the combinations that you're using some of these pedals in. I know you have been using Fractal Audio's Axe Effects for a number of years now, and you've now switched back to amps and pedals. Maybe talk a little bit about the reason behind that and, you know, your philosophy there.
Yeah, I mean, Axe Effects, you know, is an amazing piece of equipment, and for us, it's really saved us a lot of heartache. Certainly, if you're flying to India or to different places where you're not going to be able to hire the kind of equipment that you want. So Axe Effects definitely serves its purpose. But with the lockdown and this whole COVID thing, we've had a chance to go back to pedals and amps, and I hate to say it, for us it just simply suits our music a lot more. And I had to dust out all the old pedals and maybe get one or two extra new ones as well. Just so, because the Axe Effects is like a Swiss Army knife. It can literally do just about anything you can imagine. But I do think the pedals sound more unique, and I do think it's a better tone overall. And it's impossible to replicate some of these pedals. They're unique. So I'll kind of walk you through some of the pedals that we have, and we'll probably start.
Maybe follow your signal chain. So where
Okay.
you're coming in first, or
It's not the way it appears, but I'll do my best. Okay, so here we've got the Empress buffer plus. Again, just preserves the sound quality with the buffer. I have it on the send and return, so it starts here and ends here, goes out to the amp. First thing I put in is a compressor. Yeah, I mean, I use it maybe on a couple of clean guitar or maybe sustain lead, that kind of stuff.
and is that to take the peaks out of like a clean signal from your guitar, or is it set really lightly, or how is it kind of set?
Yeah, I set it light enough if I'm doing that. If I wanted to sustain it, I'll just bring up the input a little bit more, take the output back, and I could maybe bring up the 10-1 if I really wanted to sustain. So
the ratio there, that's a ratio switch.
Ratio.
Okay.
So I have a 2-1 for most of it.
So pretty light.
Pretty light, yeah. I don't want to crush it too much unless I want that kind of tone. Just a Digitech whammy, pitch shifter, using one or two of the new sounds, and on Seance Room as well, where we pitch the lead up or whatever. It's an interesting effect. I have it set to chords, but you can go to classic either. Both work for what I need it for. Then we go to this board. This is Chase Bliss Brothers. I just love this pedal. It's literally just like I use it as kind of a gain boost. Just perfect when I want to say do arpeggio guitars, and I just wanted to have a little bit of gain, but I don't really want to hear distortion. It's just the pedal to use. It has a second switch here if I need to have a little bit more of a drive to it. The next one is a company from Italy called Chirality Audio. It's called the Splinter Drive, and has 3 switches here, and I leave it in the middle when I want just normal overdrive, but I do put it on, I think it says H, which is probably like a filter that takes out the bottom end, which is very useful for me when I'm using detuned sounds. For example, if I'm in drop A, I noticed the pedals can't seem to quite handle it, so this takes the bass out and it really cuts through just the way I want it. So I use that quite a bit when I want to, when I'm down to drop A or drop B and I want it to kind of cut through the pedals a bit better. That's a very, very important.
That's interesting. So it sort of cleans up the signal on the low end, so it can distort the relevant frequencies more.
Exactly. That's 100% it. That takes us to the next one, which is the Hedgerow pitch shifter. This is an amazing pedal, and I got this a while back. I bought it second hand, and I just fell in love with it. The plan was to get rid of it, but I kept it, and I'm glad I did, because it's become a secret weapon, literally, for the new album. What it basically is a pitch shifter, a 3-way pitch shifter, but also a delay. And I have 4 settings down here, which plugs into the back of this. And
so is that MIDI, or is that a part of the pedal?
it's a part of the pedal. It's got like an expression kind of cable.
Okay.
But it's brilliant. You have different settings, like a kind of like a pitch shift or delay, which then feeds into the distortion to create this massive kind of. It's hard to explain. It was like a kind of a pitch shifted delay going into distortion. It just really creates an amazing sustain and sound. Next one is the Particle Red Panda. The new one has 4 presets, which is handy. So I use them for kind of slightly different songs. The second one is kind of like this warble kind of effect that I used on a couple of songs on the Epitaph album, like Media. It's just a lovely sound. But I also have a few other kind of interesting ones where they kind of there's a little bit of delay and a little bit of kind of detuned pitch shifter going on, which is really interesting for again, if you want to kind of have a little bit bend in your lead guitar sounds. So I really like that.
How are you switching between the presets in these pedals, and are you manually doing this?
Yeah, that was a kind of an interesting one. I was thinking, from Axe Effects, you'd hit one button and
yeah,
you're there.
it would select everything in the pedal. So how are you managing that now? And or is it to be determined?
No, to be honest with you, I got used to just changing it all manually, and I kind of thought maybe it's more interesting to see the sounds being built up in front of an audience rather than me just hitting the button and everything just just comes perfect. So I like the idea of kind of just hands on and just kind of it's kind of part of the art form, I guess. So yeah, I got used to it. I have to say it was very difficult, to get used to it again. But no, I'm just going to keep it that way. I don't want to get back into MIDI and all that stuff. The less of that, the better. Yeah. The next one is this a company from Germany called Red Secret DI. It's an overdrive pedal. I guess, is it like a Klon? I'm not too sure. But it's a very special drive, and it seems to work on certain songs where I can't get anything to work. This one seems to work. Like it's a track that we have called A Deafening Distance, and with every other drive, it just sounds brittle and sharp because of where I'm playing on it's like on a high E string. But with this, it just sounds really nice. So this is a really cool pedal. So if one of these overdrives don't work, this one will definitely work.
And do you think it's a fatter, softer tone? Do you think that's why maybe the more brittle lines that might stick out a bit too much, then it just kind of pulls those frequencies back? Or
yeah, it's definitely got. I don't know if it's fatter. It's just not a shrill. Moving on to the next one is Bad Recovery Effects from the US. This is called Bad Comrade. This pedal, and it's amazing. The thing about this one is it's a fuzz pedal with a kind of a weird delay to it. But to make it work right, you have to turn them all up full first, then plug the power in. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Okay.
So it's kind of a very quirky pedal, and then you dial in what you want. Really interesting for some of the noisier lead parts. If you don't want them to sound too clean and you want them to sound a little bit more unusual, this is the pedal to knock on for sure. The Elements by Dr. Scientist is next. Really like it. Great mid-tone off it. Just a regular distortion pedal, but it sounds fantastic. I really like that pedal, and it sounds amazing when you feed it into some of the other pedals as well, which we'll talk about later. The next one is a Boss Distortion DS1.
That's been in there in your rig, right?
I've had a few of them. This is a kind of a modified version of it. The next one is a Chase Bliss Mood pedal. I use that on the new song called Adrift. It's just basically like a delay. The setting that I have, this thing can do so many different things, but I have a delay that kind of warbles, and it feeds then into this next pedal, which is a Friedman Beo Deluxe. A little bit different than these pedals tonally. It's a little bit more. It's got a little bit more kind of nice fizz end and a little bit more mid tone to it. And this has it's a double pedal, so it can go into distortion as well. Really interesting pedal, very high quality. It's literally you could literally maybe leave those two out and you could get away with that one. But certain tones, certain songs suit these pedals better. But this is a really fantastic. I couldn't recommend it more to anybody if you're looking for something that's a really good heavy rock kind of distortion pedal. That's it right there.
So I'm noticing you got a lot of pitch shifting and warble kind of effects. Do you think that's kind of integral to your sound? Is that something you go for, and why is there so much pitch shifting?
Yeah, I think for what we're doing, we don't really want to have a too kind of straight rock kind of tones, or kind of it needs to have a certain amount of breakup for it to work.
Then I'm seeing 4 big muffs here.
Yeah, okay, so this is so they're not just for show. It definitely works. So this is what we'll talk about now. So we go into this big muff first, which is just your standard Black Russian muff, and it's set with the sustain quite low. So literally that's all it is. But what the reason this works? So let's say I switch that on, and then I switch that on. It just colours it just a little bit, just to kind of get rid of maybe that standard rock tone to something slightly more, I would say, kind of indie or whatever, just a little bit of a different kind of less rocktastic sound. So I use that kind of quite a lot, that combination, that's feeding into the big muff, but not with not too much sustain, and it really works a lot. It works brilliantly. Believe that the Metal Zone is next, but we'll just move on to this big muff for a second. So this big muff is for thicker, just as what people would expect it, your typical big muff.
Full tone, fat
sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that. It's a bit, it's got obviously a bit more mid-strip than your distortions, but yeah, I really like that sound. I've always been a fan of kind of the standard big muff tone, and the Russian ones I do think are a little bit more toneful than say the newer US silver ones. We'll backtrack to the Metal Zone. I've always used the Metal Zone back in the day. This was like the pedal I'd hit if I wanted to kind of annoy a few people.
Depending on your mood.
Depending on my mood, but I use it still today again for maybe some of the more for feedback or for kind of thickening up some lead tones or something. Again, running it into the big muff, you don't really get too much of the sound of the Metal Zone, but you do get all the power and the sustain off it. If I ran it on its own, I'd say it would be pretty. Yeah, I love that tone as well. And this is a Keeley modded version as well, so it's a little bit better than stock. So yeah, it's a great pedal, and that takes us into this pedal, which is Moose Electronics in Ireland. It's basically based on a HM2. He calls it HM23. He's modified it quite a bit. And I think it's just a fantastic sounding pedal. Really, really, he's fixed. For me, I asked him to have a little bit more top end to it, and yeah, it's fantastic. Moose Electronics in Dublin. He makes some amazing pedals. Stuff like Nomad is one of his other pedals that works great with my other amp, the High Watt that I have at home. So yeah, fantastic. Really, really good. And I have that. That seems to work. Funny enough, after the muffs, I don't know why, it just works. Initially I had the HM heavy metal pedal before these, but this one seems to work after it, so you can never tell until you actually try it. That takes us over to to this pedal here. This is just your standard New York muff. I use this one for a more shriller sound, and certainly for the endings or something where I wanted to kind of have more of a I guess a noisy sound. It's not supposed to be pretty. I definitely would use that, and it really just, especially with all these say warble effects feeding into this, it sounds mad. And you can leave all those muffs on. It works right all the way into it. The last one is a
so you might have 3 of them on at one point.
I could, yeah. I generally wouldn't have these two on at the same time. It'd be one or the other. This is a Ram's Head muff from 1974, and just a much better mid tone. These are kind of more mid strip. This has got a lot more mid, and seems to handle bass end better as well. It just cuts through more. So you could. It might be a little bit shrill for lead guitars, but definitely for rhythm, you could just use that nearly all on its own. So after this pedal, the Big Muff, it does come back to, I think it's the Mobius into the Big Sky, and to the Big Sky's last, so it's the Boss DD500, then into the Big Sky.
Is this where you get most of your delays from?
Yeah, I leave it at the front because I do use tap control quite a lot to try and get it, and then I have 2 presets per kind of 1A, 1B. And then you hit those 2 and you're up into different ones. Have a reverse delay and a few different ones there. But yeah, it's a really, really good pedal. Boss, I think I've done themselves with that one. It's a really, really good pedal. I definitely prefer it slightly over the Strymon Timeline. It's just a little bit more versatile. Then we go into the Mobius, I think. And the Mobius is just a great modulation. I don't use too much modulation, but certainly maybe on the earlier stuff like the End of Beginning, From Dusk Beyond, comes to mind where I do
So that
a bit of chorus.
fat chorusy type of sound. And
Yeah, and I have a few presets that I've made there, like this flanger and stuff like that. I haven't really used, mostly just chorus at the moment. Maybe
I haven't heard you use flanger.
No.
I don't think.
Maybe,
Unless it's very subtle.
Yeah, I haven't used this too often, but I've created a preset just all the same. And then the rotary I would use in tracks like Snowfall. And if we were to play at Sunrise in Aries, so they would use kind of a slightly tremolo-y kind of effects. Reverb's big, really important. We've got a dark hole here, and then a slightly bigger kind of, it's non-linear, but it's more of a bigger sustained kind of reverb. And then this one is it's called Bloom. It's kind of just a much more echoey kind of sound, which is really cool for some of the intro guitars and stuff like that need that big kind of sound. But yeah, that's kind of the pedals all sorted out, I guess.
So let's talk about the amp then.
Yeah, so we have it's an Orange 8030 twin channel. I just got this amazing mid-tone. I just fell in love with it immediately. I was always skeptical. I was thinking, certainly with pedals, would you need something more than 30 watts? But for the sound I want, no. I did buy an Orange Dual Terror for our fly-ins, which is a smaller one. A little bit different, but it works. And do prefer that slightly, but the Orange Dual Terror will get me out of jail every time.
So how have you got each channel set here? Are they set similar, or is there... Why do you have two channels? What's happening there?
Yeah, I think I'm not actually using the channel 2 at the moment. I haven't needed it before, but if I was, I probably would make sense to use the National Glenwood, which is a little bit duller than most of the other guitars. Probably you could maybe crank the treble a bit more, but
okay.
Generally live I'm only just working with the bottom channels and just a little bit of gain, not too much, just enough to get a little bit of breakup. And volume up pretty high.
And then we're in here recording a live session for Bad Apple Music, so we've got some mics on the cab, and we've also got a DI coming out, so let's talk about maybe the mic positions and the microphones as well, and the different tones that they add to the sound.
So we obviously just do standard SM57. I'm sure there's other mics out there. I just got used to that microphone, and I know what it does, and it's a very easy way, it's an industry standard microphone, and I use that mic to kind of find the position that tonefully sounded the best to my ears. The left side is a little bit different than the right, but I prefer the right side slightly more. And we have a Royer 121, which is a ribbon mic I picked up a while back, and it's just a little bit more, less shrill.
Mid-tone is really nice off that mic, right? It's
a much better mid-tone than the 57. 57 has got the cut, and that one's got slightly more the low end and the gorgeous mids. It seems to suit quite a lot of the more abrasive distortion sounds anyway. So, and it's going into a one of these cloud lifters, and which just allows it to. The reason I really use it is to make sure that no phantom power can really destroy that microphone.
Yeah, you've also got the pop shield there just in case any wind comes out of the speaker and
puts
too much pressure on the ribbon.
That happened to me on the recording where we had two 4x12 stacked up and it blew the ribbon somehow. I thought it was, that shouldn't have happened, but I thought the only way I think it happened was somehow wind or something came out of the speaker.
And then what's happening on top here?
We've got... Okay, so this is 2 notes torpedo, which is kind of like a cab simulation. Really, really good. Obviously, you're kind of.
So that's a DI.
It's a DI.
Okay.
It's kind of getting back into your Axe Effects world slightly because they are virtual cabs, and you can, and on your software you can edit whatever where you want. But what I like this, it's easy to use, doesn't take too long, and it does have all the orange cabs as well. And it's kind of like you can virtually move the microphones around. I don't think it's quite as good as the mics. But
it's a very solid backup if anything should happen to the mics here.
And if you're in a flying situation, you can't get a good cab. This will take us, easy. This will do the job any day of the week. Then you have the Captor 16. Literally, all that is just if I wanted to pull the sound off the cab, I'd be able to listen to it silent.
Okay.
So it's handy for working late at night or something. You don't want to annoy the neighbours. That works. And it's just powered by a fuel tank. It powers both of them up. because it's got 9 and 12 volts. So that's essentially the. Now, obviously, back here we've got a Kenton MIDI, which sends the MIDI messages to the status display back there for my tunings.
So you're running those over Ethernet and to get across the stage, and
Yeah, I think, as I said, Ethernet's a little bit more reliable than long distance MIDI cables. So this seems to be foolproof for me so far. So we're here now with Jamie. Jamie, maybe you can talk to us maybe a little bit, first of all, about your guitar there.
Well, yeah, so I have 2 different guitars. Well, I actually have 3 guitars that I use live. Today I only have 2 of them with me. This is the Fender Jazzmaster. This is the vintage reissue. The things worth noting really on this one, it has a mastery bridge, and it has a stay trem.
Okay.
The rest of it is stock. The pickups sounded really, really good, so I didn't really feel the need to change them.
Perfect. And how do you find the mastery bridge? Do you feel it better than the stock pickup or the stock
Yeah, the
bridge?
one that I didn't really give it enough security. Really, the one that came with it. So I just felt it was a necessary change. I did it to a previous jazz master that I owned, and I was really happy with it. So there was a couple of other options in the market, but I just chose the one I was familiar with.
And you also have a second Jazzmaster as well?
I do as well. That's the Jazzmaster Pro.
Okay. And did you make any modifications on this one?
Just the Curtis Novak pickups on this one. This pickup here, it's just gives a fatter sound.
Okay.
And just cuts through the mix nicely. In comparison to the stock pickups, I just wasn't really happy with them. Funnily, on the vintage reissue, it was fine. It was just on this one.
Okay.
But no, really happy with them as well. I've used Curtis Novak in the past. It's never let me down. He's been great. So yeah, other than that, I have locking tuners on them. We have obviously some sort of lower, especially the newer material. We have some lower tunings. So I just thought it was important to have these. Didn't want to do it on the vintage reissue in case I ever wanted to sell it. Didn't want to sort of drill anything into it.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. So you can see it has that nice kind of fat, chunky sound, but it's also sort of cutting through the mix as well. It's
cool. So I noticed you have like the Friedman, and then you have it going into the Black Russian muff.
Yeah, the black muff just gives it a bit more character. I usually have the Friedman on all the time. That's obviously a nice overdrive. There's a distortion in it as well, but I generally will keep that on all the time, and I'll send that into one of the big muffs. The way I kind of have the big muff set up is that the black muff just sort of gives a nice bit of character. The green muff, the Russian muff, is obviously a step up again.
And then what's the elk head?
The elk head, yeah, that's it's a very, very good pedal again. A step up from the big muff again. Brilliant pedal.
And I think, is that also, if I'm not mistaken, made by Moose Electronics?
Moose Electronics.
So is that kind of like another variation of a muff, or what was it that you...
Yeah, it is. I kind of felt with the silver muff, I kind of wanted, I wanted to step up yet again, and I just, in certain parts throughout the set, I feel like, the silver muff is perfect for that, but the Moose Electronics elk head is just perfect for bringing that extra stage up again,
And then, of course, you have the Pumpkin Pie there by Stomp Underfoot.
Yeah, I use that predominantly with a bass guitar, actually. It's good for sort of chords as well, heavy chords, but I find when I combine the Pumpkin Pie with the elk head with the heavy bass sections, it's a winning combination. Cool. There. So this is my bullet bass.
Cool.
I use it 2 parts throughout the current set that we have. All is Violent, which is what I was playing there, and then Fireflies as well.
Of course, I remember back in the day, Niels used to put the old capo on the bass to play those lines again at the beginning. So as these days, it's left to you, Jamie.
Yeah, it's kind of, it's a similar... it's just it occupies the same space as the guitar, a little bit under. So you have your guitar, Niels, and then the bass guitar arpeggio sort of sits in between them somewhere. So it's a good place to have it. The pumpkin pie, as I was saying earlier on, really complements the elk head. So for those kind of again the outro of All Is Violin, for example.
And maybe just quickly just talk to us about, just very briefly, the pedals that you have on the board.
So we'll start obviously into the Empress buffer. So there's a lot of pedals on the board, so I just think it's important to have a buffer. Empress compressor as well.
Of course, yeah. And you use that probably just for cleans or?
Yeah, for cleans. If I want a bit of additional sustain or something like that, I'll stick on the compressor. Some lead notes, some lead sections rather.
Of course, I'm familiar with the Chirality Audio Splinter Drive.
Yeah, it's a great pedal, yeah. That's kind of if I want just a little bit of drive but still maintain the nice tone of the clean sound, I'll step on that. If I want just a little bit more dirt, brilliant pedal, brilliant company. Particle shifter, that's kind of more weird distorted delay kind of. I use it for the sections if I'm playing behind the bridge.
Okay.
Or if I want some kind of like lead sections cutting up, I use the particle.
Okay.
Again, the Hedgerow is good for that as well. Heavier leads, I'll step on that if I want it to just take off a bit. The Hedgerow pedal is probably one of the most important pedals I have on that board, actually, for lead anyway.
Yeah.
Classic DS1 there as well, And
that's it looks like maybe a Keeley modded version?
Yeah, it is, yeah. I actually only use it once or twice throughout the set, but where I do use it, it's extremely important. And again, it's just another classic pedal, It does exactly what it says in the tin. Another sort of central pedal on the board there is the Friedman, as I was telling you about earlier on. Two different, so it's got an overdrive, has a distortion. Would generally leave them on all the time. And
we've touched on the black Muff, but I see there's the old Russian green.
Yeah, I just think it has something real special about it.
I know they're a little bit fatter sounding than say the black ones. They've definitely got a little bit more. It's maybe pretty good for the lead guitar kind of.
It is, yeah.
To it, yeah.
Yeah, and they layer up really well, So you can be, you can sort of have the Russian green muff and then step on the silver muff, and it just, they just really, really complement each other. I love that the three of those pedals together are great.
Of course, I introduced you to the Bad Comrade there.
Yeah. It's a very interesting pedal. Use it sparingly. I would, I wouldn't use it all the time.
That's
but,
true.
Again, this sort of. Maybe the end of Suicide by Star, or
you want it to fall apart.
Really, just want to fall apart and break up and sort of sound a bit chaotic. That's the only pedal, but again, does it really, really well.
Of course, you got the Ernie Ball volume pedal tuner.
Yeah, it's handy. We have so many different tunings, and especially we're playing from the older stuff to the new stuff. You could be anywhere really. So I think it's important to have the tuner.
Like obviously, an obvious question. You've got the TC tuner, and then you've got the Ernie Ball. Is there a specific reason why you would use the two?
To be perfectly honest, I prefer the poly tuner.
Of course, you've got the timeline. I've opted obviously with the Boss, but you stuck with the timeline.
Yeah, I'm just familiar with it. I've used it for years, and it probably has more features than I actually need, if I'm being totally honest. But I love it. I have a couple of presets, and I'll just tap tempo to whatever the BPM that the track is in. And I'll go there. I have a shorter delay and a medium delay, and then a longer delay depending on what I'm playing. Same as the Big Sky here. They work really well together. Obviously, they were designed to be sort of used together, I think. So I have again a sort of very, very wet reverb, medium, and then a kind of dry enough reverb.
Okay.
And then finally, really like the metal zone. People might look at it and think, "What why is there metal zone?" But it's just there's no better pedal for me for feedback than the metal zone. If I want to get long, loud feedback, I'll just step on the metal zone.
It's instantaneous.
Yeah.
So okay, quick look at the amplifier there. So you've got obviously the same as myself, but I think it's a slightly older model, the Orange 8030.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant amp.
So you channel 1 is for the guitar.
Channel 1's the guitar. Second channel's for the bass. You can change channels here with the pedal. The orange. It's just a foot switch. It can be done on the head as well, but I just prefer doing it on a foot switch. Then I have an SM57. We've obviously marked sweet spot in the amp, but it's a really effective working combination.
And you have the 2 notes there as well.
2 notes, yeah, mainly for monitoring purposes.
Okay.
But it's fantastic.
You prefer the sound of the mic'd up cap?
I do, yeah. I just think for what we're doing here now, it's better than the 2 notes, as I said, just predominantly.
It's a great backup to have or something.
It is, yeah, it is. So yeah, that's my setup. Obviously, keys probably won't interest anybody there, but
yeah,
that's another one of my duties. But that's pretty much that's all for now.
Definitely a lot of distortion going on here. What have we got here? We've got the Boss HM2.
Yeah, so we have a couple of drive pedals. We have the HM2.
Yep.
We have the Chiralty Black Swan, which is like a single knob fuzz pedal.
Cool.
And we also have the Dark Glass Ultra X, which is like a preamp, but it's also a drive on that as well. So lots of drive.
Lots of drive. And then, of course, you have the Noble preamp as well.
Yeah, so I'll do the signal chain in a minute. We can start with the bass.
Of course, you used to use the Fender Precision bass. So what prompted you to change
so we
this?
wanted to change the sound. I wanted the sound to be a bit more uppery and not as low. So the short scale was the perfect solution to that. This is just a JMJ. It's all stock. And nothing's really modified on it. The only unusual thing is probably the string choice. The string gauge will be 115, 80, 60, 45, and it will be tuned D, A, D, G.
What was the reason for choosing that gauge?
Just to make sure the string tension was kind of even as you could get it. So, and normally when you put on a regular gauge, especially if you tune down, it'll be quite floppy, and the short scale is a slightly reduced tension, so I'd always put on a slightly heavier gauge.
Okay.
So it's
Would
not
that
too
be
wobbly.
kind of a big part of the sound, or it wouldn't change the sound too much?
I don't think it would change the sound too much. It would make it stay in tune a bit more.
Okay. So maybe just walk us through the...
Yeah, so
it's
a relatively simple setup. So Boss Tuner is the first thing in the chain. That goes into the Noble preamp, which is a great preamp. It's also a DI. You can actually use it straight into the board, but it's clean. So I would have the treble kind of just before 3/4, bass roughly 3/4. Also have engaged the cut.
Okay.
So I think that is a cut from 80. It just reduces about 6 dB, I think. It's just to clean up the signal a bit. It goes from this into the HM2. All the settings are kind of nearly up full.
Okay, so it's just...
level, bass up full. The color is not quite full. It's just before it gets too trebly.
Okay.
Distortion's up full. That goes from that into the Black Swan. It's just a single knob. It sounds brilliant on the bass. It goes from this into the Dark Glass preamp. Kind of a lot of mid boosted. Some of the Dark Glass can be quite metallic sounding.
Okay.
So I boosted quite a lot of mid. So from this, at a gig, if we're doing a live show, you can come out straight to the DI. It's a cab sim on it. They're pretty decent cab sims you can get.
So would you do a DI out of the Noble, and would you do a DI out of that, or would you just...
No, I'll just go from this. So,
okay.
Because this, if you want a clean sound, you could go straight from this. It's perfect.
For kind of maybe reamping purposes.
For reamping purposes, or you could do anything with it really. But for this setup, I'm using a lot of drive, so I want to include all that on it.
Of course.
So for in the gig situation, you would come out from this. Cab sim, as I said, obviously for recording, like today.
So yeah, are you using DI for the Ampeg here?
No, so we're using the mic. We're using a Neumann 47.
That's the FET version.
Yeah, that's the FET version. So Ampeg Heritage Classic.
Okay.
Again, the settings, I would have the gain kind of halfway of both the low and high
engages, the ultra ones. Bass is quite low, lots of mid range. Frequencies, I think, is on the third one. Treble quite low as well. Master, as I said, as you could hear, was quite loud. So yeah, let's go to the sound palette. So the clean sound, it's controlled by the volume. This will be the clean. So if I want more drive, you just turn the knob up a bit more. So it's never 100% clean. It's always a bit driven. You can hear about the hiss on the amp as well, which can cause a problem for kind of soft cut parts of the song, but I guess it's just a necessary evil. Yeah, so if we wanted more drive, the first thing I would hit is the fuzz. Then for the insane pedal will be the HM2. Yeah, so as Deshane said, it just goes into each other. It just sounded better having the HM2 first and then the...
Also the splinters last.
Yeah, the Black Swan, yeah.
Oh, sorry, the Black Swan, excuse me, yeah.
Yeah, that's the way it works. Pretty simple setup, just a lot of drive, especially for some of the new stuff off the new album, needs a lot of drive. The bass sound is not like a classic bass sound, especially on the new album. There are kind of more traditional bass bits, but a lot of it is kind of chords. It sounds like a guitar.
Maybe just play, maybe a fade, if you could just play that.
Yeah.
Niels here for showing us his bass rig, and we hope that you enjoyed our rig rundown. Take care, thank you very much.